Hi everyone, and welcome to today's video from the 8-part video series on understanding painful emotions. My name is Renee Zaia. I'm a relationship and life coach, helping people to make the move to creating lives and relationships they can truly thrive in. If you're new to the video series, first of all, welcome. And if you're already a fan, welcome back. Today's video is about the painful emotion of shame. So let's get right into it. So in today's video about shame, we'll be looking at understanding the scale of shame-based emotions, the positive purpose of shame, and also the impacts of shame. So shame is one of the 6 umbrellas of painful emotions, along with anger, fear, sadness, hurt, and guilt. So what is shame? So there's been a lot of work around shame recently by Brené Brown. And she defines it as an intensely painful feeling or experience of believing that we are flawed and therefore unworthy of love and belonging. Something we've experienced, done, or failed to do makes us unworthy of connection. She also points out that shame is different to guilt. So shame is an absolute statement around I am bad, whereas guilt is I did something bad. And also guilt is more of an indicator about where we might have breached our own moral standards of code. So it's very different to shame. It can be triggered, the emotion of shame, can be triggered in the common areas of things like appearance, body image, body functions, sexuality, family, parenthood, identity, your career, health, aging, religion, speaking out, and also surviving trauma. So it covers a multitude of different areas as a painful emotion. So let's look at where painful emotions actually come from. So as humans, we're all different trees but in the same forest, and we actually have a common structure when it comes to our foundations or our root systems. So we all have a past, our own personal experiences that shaped who we are today and our views on the world. Some of them have been positive experiences, some of them negative and also traumatic. And that informs our limiting beliefs. So a limiting belief is essentially a negative thought on repeat. And you usually hear it from people when they speak in absolutes. So they'll say things like, money doesn't grow on trees, or I'm never going to find that true soulmate, or I'm never going to get the career of my dreams. So they're absolute statements. And that influences how we perceive the world and also our emotional experience of the world. We also have our personality. So as humans, we grow, we evolve, we adapt, and we develop different personality traits. Some people call them managers or internal managers or archetypes. And they could be things like being the rescuer, the victim, the fixer, or even the wounded child. And there's no judgment attached to that. That's just us as humans. And those personality traits can also be changed as well if we want to. We also have the central nervous system. So we as humans are hardwired for survival. So our brain, our nervous system communicates with all our other body organs, including the endocrine system, which is our glands. So for example, if you have a fearful thought, the brain will communicate to the adrenal glands to start pumping adrenaline, which is a stress-based hormone, to help us with that fight or flight response. So that's part of the system that keeps us hardwired to be safe. And because we are hardwired to be safe, that influences how we experience different emotions as well. And is a given that we will experience painful emotions because we are wired for survival. We also have our thoughts, but what you may not know is that only 5% of your thoughts come from the conscious mind, and 95% obviously come from the subconscious mind. So that's our automatic thinking. And with between 70 and 100,000 thoughts per day, most of which are negative, it's very difficult to get out of front of any painful emotion or even those negative thoughts using a conscious thought. So we'll often feel or have experienced an emotion before we have any conscious thought about it. So coming back to the tree, there's usually an event. And when it comes to Shame, it could be anything. It could be something that you've just been told to feel ashamed about. It could even be something as simple as farting in a meeting. You know, we're so embarrassed by our bodily functions and sometimes can feel shame about that. And then we experience the emotions associated with that event. And then that creates very physical symptoms in the body as well, which I'll come to in more detail a bit later on. But let's look at the umbrella of shame and the scale of shame-based emotions. So this is an indicative scale. This is not absolute. This is based on my perception. And as we go through the scale, you might find that certain shame-based emotions are more significant or more intense than others, and therefore might appear somewhere different on your version of the scale. But the intent of the scale is just to show a general gradual evolution in the intensity of shame-based emotions. So on the left-hand side, if we are feeling shame, we might experience some mild emotions of shame relating to feeling uncomfortable or awkward or feeling very self-conscious about, you know, it might be our appearance, our behaviours, the way we talk sometimes. And then sometimes there's more significant events, so feeling embarrassed or feeling ashamed, and that can even escalate further to more intense emotions of shame based on things like self-disgust, feeling absolutely humiliated and mortified. And what you'll find though is that some of those more extreme shame-based emotions will involve other people. So some people might be humiliated at a public event. Self-disgust can be a bit more internal based. Feeling embarrassed usually involves someone external. So it's very different as we move up and down the shame scale. So that's the umbrella of shame. Now, if you look at Brene Brown's definition of shame, being unworthy of love and connection, there doesn't appear to be any significant positive purpose of shame, as it's mostly about making a person feel wrong or embarrassed or humiliated. And inherently, we are all lovable people. So there really isn't a purpose of shame. But if you are feeling shameful, that might be something you want to review with a professional. And shame also is very different to guilt. And sometimes we do feel embarrassed by certain things, you know, and it might just it might trigger a review of our behaviours, but ultimately we need to know that we are worthy of love and connection. So it doesn't have a huge purpose. But its close cousin guilt has more of a compelling purpose, which we'll explore in a separate video. But it has a lot of negative impacts. So people often feel shame around, you know, their sexual reproductive areas. So it can affect those areas of our bodies. From a mental health perspective, it can lead to stagnation, the ability to make decisions. It can also create a sense of powerlessness. So if you're living in this world of shame, it's going to really, you know, limit your ability to create positive changes if you're constantly afraid of feeling ashamed or you are feeling ashamed. With regards to relationships, sometimes shame causes us to withdraw socially and isolate ourselves, and there's often a fear of being vulnerable. So that affects our ability to make deep, genuine connections with people. And also, if we've got shame, we're not always entirely ourselves or express our authentic selves or being completely honest, because we start to filter ourselves. From a behaviour perspective, it can trigger things like overeating or other addictions. It can trigger that self-loathing or that self-disgust, and it may result in people not fully participating in life. And if people have experienced shame or humiliation or embarrassment, often they're resistant to giving something a second try. So for example, if you've had a public speaking experience and it went, you know, not as well as you'd hoped and you felt shameful or embarrassed, it might be something that you are resistant to trying again. So it can limit our ability to experience the fullness of life if we don't get some help with it. So in summary, shame doesn't really have a huge positive purpose. It's different to guilt, where we might have done something that's gone along against our moral codes and it's something that we regret and therefore will take corrective action for it. But shame does have quite significant impacts, and if not managed responsibly, can have physical, mental, relationship, and also behavioural impacts. So that's shame. And if you need some help in this area, if you've been experiencing some shame, I do encourage you to speak to a professional therapist, life coach, counsellor, or even a holistic wellness practitioner that can assist with this. And there's always further support at Beyond Blue as well. So that's today's video on understanding the painful emotion of shame. I hope you've enjoyed it. And if you have any comments or questions, please drop them in the comments below, or you can contact me privately on Messenger or other methods. Have a fabulous day, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Okay, take care now. Bye.